There's people coming in. All right.
Yeah, we
Let's hit
figured
the
out the
right button.
buttons.
Yay. And I think everybody can chat, but if somebody wants to test it, go for it.
Yeah, I did just double check it too. It looks like it's good.
Cool. Corey, that was to everyone.
All right. Hello everybody. We ditched Oscar this week.
Yeah.
Actually, he ditched us, let's be honest.
Telling you,
But
man, that guy got that chief next to his name. And he's too good for the little people.
yeah,
That's
he's
what it
he's
is.
kind of a big deal. I think he
I
just
know.
goes around shopping for suits now. I don't know.
I
Like
think
he's
that's it.
just
Yeah, just
tailor to tailor. He's like,
suits
oh, I
and
got a tailor appointment today. I'm too busy for that call.
yeah, suits and Lambos, right? I think that's what he's doing. Just
Yeah.
trying to get two Lambos so he can just ski on them. No. No, I think he's out at. Do you do Hacks and Hops? Is that what you did at Bozeman? I
Yeah.
think it's. Yeah, I think it's what he's
Yeah.
doing.
I believe was that yesterday? Or is that
Mm,
next week? I don't know. He's out.
I think it
He's
was
out in that
yesterday.
area. I think that was yesterday.
Yeah, I think it was
Um,
yesterday.
Probably should know that, but
Yeah,
yeah,
well, we weren't
he's in
invited, so.
Montana for like the next month, so I don't know when it is.
And in Vegas before that, so yeah, I don't know if
Yeah,
he's gonna live out of his suitcase for a while, I guess.
pretty much, pretty much. And yes, Kyle, we did survive DEFCON. Some of us, at least, most of us. I will say. I Interestingly, I know like a lot of people because like last year, DEFCON had like masks in place, right? Like a mask requirement. They lifted that this year. A lot of people were very concerned about that, and a lot of people were concerned in general about going and potentially, getting COVID and stuff like that, which is totally normal and definitely up to them to avoid. And I know Pinky did not go to DEFCON for
Yeah,
concerns around that and some family concerns around that, and but the interesting thing I'll say, just anecdotally, no science involved whatsoever. Last year, we had 19 people from our team go to Vegas for DEF CON. 9 of them got COVID with the masking and everything in place. This year, we had 25 people go to DEF CON and 1 person got COVID.
yeah, that's pretty good.
So it does seem to, at least anecdotally, no science involved, it seemed to have gone better for us this year.
Yeah,
Better surviving of it. Everyone survived last year, but some people were in a rough state after it last year.
yeah, for a while.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think I don't know about your team. I think my guys are still trying to recover just from the general DEF CON-ness of it, right?
Yeah.
All the festivities and such. It's been a little slow on the blue team this week. Everybody's just a little bit dragging a
Yeah.
little bit behind, I think. But
A lot of people are catching up on sleep and hydration, and that was the tough
yeah,
thing. I actually like, a lot of people obviously, after the con get together, hang out. We obviously get a house together and stuff. We do a lot of drinking normally. This year was rough. I was so dehydrated just from the weather that I barely drank anything. I was so busy trying to slam water that I didn't
yeah.
have room for anything else.
That's
Um,
why that's
that,
why I sent you guys a big box of liquid IVs. Come on,
you
man.
sure did. You sure did. 2 huge bags of it.
Oh man.
Oh
Yeah.
goodness. And
Yeah.
yeah, Kyle said in chat here, what was his first time? Wow, aligns. That is very true. I know on Saturday I went to the con to take care of some stuff, and it was right around 11 a.m. I got there, and by noon, when I like got done doing, because we had to go for capture the packet stuff, and at noon when I was kind of leaving the area, every single hallway, every single space was shoulder to shoulder.
Man.
I was a little overwhelmed. I needed to find a dark, empty, quiet place after that for a little bit. It was a lot
So bigger than last year, I think.
bigger than last year for sure. I mean, last year was still kind of a recovery year after kind
Yeah.
of the major COVID stuff. Um, this year seemed more in line with 2019. Um,
Gotcha.
so yeah,
I
I
mean,
think it was
last year
around
was
30,000 people this year. I think it was just under 28, 29,000 was a number I heard. I don't know exactly.
last year was enough people for me. I mean, I remember like when you'd have the big changes, right? The talks would let out or whatever was going on. You had those. It was pretty packed in the hall. It wasn't bad. It was manageable, but it was pretty thick, pretty full. So
Yeah. VM World was like that pre-COVID. VM World, I didn't know it was that big, or is it just a small venue and so there's a lot of people crammed in?
VMworld was a big conference, best
Yeah,
I can remember. Yeah, Them and EMC, which I know they're all like one happy family now or not or something, but I know I went to the EMC conference a couple years. I mean, this would have been like mid 2010s, somewhere around there, and that thing was huge. To me, it seemed like it was as big as DEFCON was last year, which is wild. It's a storage conference, you know what I mean? But and like Imagine Dragons play in one year. It's weird.
Yeah. In a prior life, prior to the pen testing life, I used to go to the Dreamforce, the Salesforce conference. That had tons of people. I went there from 2010 to 2000 to whenever, I don't know, 8 or so, somewhere in there, and it was that was 17 probably. I would go every year. That there was like that, right? Like I saw like tons of like big bands. It was a big bands, but there's just amazing amount of people just all over San Francisco. I'm glad I wasn't going to that with COVID around, but
one of the funnier ones I went to was in Vegas, and it was Veeam, so like the Veeam backup solutions, like I think they call it like Veeam World or whatever what they call it. But went to that, and everybody said, like kind of the big thing here is the big Veeam party. Like they throw a really big party, and so they rented out like that Caesars round bar thing that they had, that club. They rented that thing out and put everybody in there, which is pretty cool. But what I loved most about it was they had all these talks, right? People from Microsoft, like the dude who invented PowerShell or whatever was there, just different things like that. And every talk was like, we're going to talk about the thing we were talking about. And then right at the end, they would go, and you can back it up with Veeam. And that was just how they worked it in. That was like the whole thing. Yeah. I was like, oh, cool. I've learned about a lot of cool things here, but almost nothing about Veeam. So thanks, guys.
But you can back it up with Veeam. That's all you really need.
But you can back it up with Veeam. That was the end of everything. Yep.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
I mean, that makes it at least cool for people coming. They get to hear about other things than just Veeam.
Right. No, that's true. Because as I was going out there, like really a whole conference on Veeam. I mean, it's cool. I like Veeam, but it's a lot of time to just talk about one thing.
Yeah.
So
how many people that are listening in did go to Black Hat or DEF CON or both? I am curious. I mean, we got at least one in chat that said something about it, but we obviously did go last week. Well, I did. Pinky stayed home, but he helped out from afar. I was part of the team from afar. And we had 25 people go out. It was an interesting time. Lots of overwhelmed social situations with so many people, and then coming back and decompressing at the Airbnb that we had and swimming and playing basketball and things like that, kind of to take a break off of things. But it was a really good time. I know a lot of people learned a decent amount of things. I know we did some competitions and stuff. You helped out with the blue team one from afar.
Yeah,
pretty good in that too, actually, from what I heard.
We did, yeah. Pretty pleased with it, man. We took second in the blue team village CTF. Topped out the score, like we cleared the board, but we were about an hour and a half or maybe 2 hours behind first place, something like that. I won't share who we were told the first place team was, but I'm okay with us competing with those guys and keeping them on their toes, sweating a little bit. So it's a good time, yeah. So it was a fun CTF. There were some complaints. I mean, as there always are, right? Every CTF has some goofy thing, but this one in particular, they had no real standardized flag format, and
I saw a little bit of that. I kind of shoulder surfed a little bit of it. Yeah.
There were a couple things too where there were multiple answers for a question, and they were legit. I mean, if we were working an investigation, it would have been a legitimate answer. And they didn't want that one. They wanted another one. Just little things like that. But that's okay. It's just part of the CTF, and you just kind of get used to that. There's always something. But the guys did. Yeah, they really enjoyed it. I know several folks did that. I think a couple of guys got in on like the Lonely Hard Drive challenge too, which looked pretty neat. I don't know if you saw any of that.
Yeah, a little bit. We were actually in LineCon when someone just walked up and handed one of our guys a hard drive. And I was like, oh, neat. I'd heard this was going to be a thing. So we took it back. We started messing with it. It was a thing to do on Thursday, essentially, when not a lot was going on. But then as soon as like other things started opening up, we kind of dropped it. And then we talked to him at the end being like, hey, where'd we place, by the way? And they were like, yeah, you guys ended up in like 9th. You were in 1st the whole time. And then you just stopped working on it. We were like, dang it. I didn't even know we were in 1st. That would have been cool. But
it seems like that wouldn't seem like a really good challenge for our team, right? Like for the ambush team, like that's a really good one from what I saw of the flags. I was just kind of following along on our Discord.
Yeah. I will say that one thing I thought when I looked at the blue team stuff, and I always think this way about blue team stuff, is that a lot of CTS, for anybody who's not familiar with CTS, capture the flag, but it's you know, either blue or red team kind of specific way of going about it. You're trying to find a flag hidden somewhere and report it back and get points for it, right? Play a game of it. The blue team versions of it are always much more true to the job, true to the position.
Yeah.
It's like you're going through logs, kind of building out a story, seeing what the path of compromise was, like working out all these details. I'm so jealous of that, because if you look at it from the other side, like the stuff that the red team does, it's like 10 to 20% of it is something that's applicable to the job, I feel like, and then like the other 80-ish% is just puzzle work. It's just
Yeah.
like flexing your brain, being like, hey, how smart are you, type of thing. It almost feels like an IQ test mixed with a little bit of just recognition of certain ideas and stuff. So
Yeah.
they're still fun. I always look at them, and we talked about this years and years and years now on these podcast webinars, etc. But it's, for me, it's always a team bonding experience and stuff.
Oh yeah.
So
Absolutely. Yeah. It's like,
much
well,
more
it's
than
like
that than a proof of how good I am or something at anything.
definitely. Yeah. I totally get that. And I know, like, well, I talked to you on Thursday, I guess it was, and I was like, make sure you drag my guys along, because I want everybody, that to me, that is the most beneficial thing we do out there. Is it's a lot of people who don't get to see each other very often, or don't get to talk even all that often, because
Yeah.
you know some of our teams work together from time to time, but it's not constant, right? And so I always like that aspect of it, is just get everybody together, let everybody understand what each person knows. I mean, we all have good things to learn off of each other, so it's fun for that. But I do agree on the blue team challenges. It is a lot more true to form. Um, One of the things I actually really did like that the blue team village did was they allegedly gave you the entire data set, so you could run it through your own tools and not just use theirs, because that's always a challenge for us. Is they'll be using some tool that we just never encounter in the wild, and we've got to go learn how to use the tool plus do the investigation, which is a good experience because you get to try some things you don't normally do. Um, but I'm still not 100% convinced it was the full data set. Some stuff that
Yeah.
seemed like it was missing to me, but that's okay. It was better than what we usually get. So I think they did a really good job with it overall, and they were helpful. If you needed something, they were good. But yeah, and I'm with you. I hate that you guys don't get to do as much fun, like, job applicable stuff, because it seems like to me that would be a whole lot of fun. It's just like, hey, here's a whole bunch of boxes, go have fun and see what you can find the flags through exploits and whatever, not just,
Yeah.
here's a picture of Batman. What does this mean? That kind of stuff.
Yeah, I will say that one of the challenge, or one of those like contests or whatever we did this year, was the Red Team Village CTF, and we got into the finals for that. The first part of it was very much like the preliminaries or qualifiers, whatever you want to call it, was standard CTF kind of puzzly stuff and random stuff, and a mixture of all these different categories. The finals section was done in Hackle Box, in a Hackle Box like
Cool.
lab environment, and it was a network with a bunch of machines that you actually had to go after. Now, the unfortunate thing is that part was more fun. We ended up having a bunch of different things we had to do at the same time, and so we couldn't spend a lot of time on it. And you only get 6 hours total, like 4 hours one day and 2 hours the next day, I think, to work on that. And so we ended up not being able to work on it much. But I would have loved to see a CTF that was more like just that style, where like, here's a network, go for it. Because then it would be a little bit more true to form in some ways. So
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. And I think you guys would murder that. I mean, not that you're not good at puzzles and that kind of thing as well, but I mean, it's
yeah.
a lot of those are interpretive and like, what do you think they think you want and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or I think I said that wrong. Close enough. Yeah, you get what I
Something
mean.
like that, Yeah.
Surprised we don't have anybody else saying they went to DEFCON this year in the chat. So
Yeah. Brian said he wanted to, conflicting plans. See, the whole thing is you just got to know, I'm doing this. That's my plans. They already posted this next year's and the year after's. It's already up there. I think it's
yeah,
like 8th or 11th, I want to say, is next year's.
you're just gonna need more dedication, man. I mean,
Yeah. Just
like
pencil
my
it
whole
off right
house
now.
was, yeah, my whole house was falling apart. You know where I was at? I'm sitting right here in this chair.
Anyway, we're not
So,
here just to talk about
yeah,
what we did last week, right? I think we have a couple other things to talk about, but
we do.
yeah, I do know I ran into a few different people from my Portland area when I was in DEF CON. A lot of people went. It was a big one. It was weird to run into people that I had met out here in the security meeting, and then just be like walking in the hallway and someone be like, "Oh, hey," and you're like, "Oh, Jesus, I know you," But that was fun too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, killer. Well,
So
you want to talk about actual stuff?
Yeah,
Do
let's
we
talk
keep
about some
going?
fishing and stuff.
Yeah, we do have a lot of fishing today. A lot of fishing on the line today. Um, First one, let's talk a little bit about EvilProxy. I don't know if you got to catch up on that one. Just a quick hit for everybody. EvilProxy was it is a phishing technique, right? It's very man in the middle esque. It's kind of how it works. Primarily used to steal full authentication tokens, right? So post multi-factor, things like that, so that you don't need to have the multi-factor to get in there. First popped up last year around this time, actually, so it was September of 2022. And I remember when it came out then, we saw a few cases then utilizing that technique, and we've seen a few with this latest rash of them. But apparently an ongoing campaign right now. I don't know, Eric, how much did you get to dig into? Does it look familiar to you, or something you guys are? I mean, I know it's a similar technique to probably some things you guys use.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit more advanced. I mean, a lot of times when we're doing kind of basic fishing, it's not super targeted. And, like as far as engagements, a lot of times people want more drive-by generic stuff because that's the majority of what people see. But, on some of the red team stuff, we might employ things a little bit more like this. And yeah, I mean, this one uses like a reverse proxy. Essentially, kind of the thing to think about it is like when you hit the site that you're going to go to, instead of it trying to just have you log into it and capture your stuff, it's basically just being a man in the middle between the real site and you. And so you request to it goes out and requests to the other site, it demonstrates things back to you that site gave, and then it just kind of acts as that in between, obviously with the incorrect domain name or something like that's referring to it, but it basically is just proxying traffic back and forth between, and it sits in the middle, and because of the way it sits in the middle, it can capture some of that data, but it also doesn't have to recreate a lot of the systems, right? Like a normal old phishing would be you'd have to emulate a lot of stuff and try to recreate a lot of behaviors. But by proxying it through and doing some tricks while you do that and being able to kind of rewrite certain things as it comes through, you're going to be able to make it essentially serve up the original page, all the original page's functionality and all these things, but capture and log whatever you want in between. As kind of the attacker in the middle. It's similar to a man in the middle attack, as many people have heard of in the past, but it's kind of a phishing man in the middle thing. And it's very effective for being able to do things that one, you don't have to reinvent a wheel. And two, you're able to do things that look legitimate because they basically are legitimate. And it's a great way, and one of the few ways of really kind of bypassing MFA requirements, because you're just kind of feeding it through. In some aspects.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. To me, that's what makes this one so effective. And you hit on that. There was you are essentially logging into the legitimate site. Like if you go to O365 through one of these links, right? You're logging into O365. You're gonna see your inbox. You're gonna see all the things you normally would see. So you never think anything about it. But it's that proxy in between that's grabbing that traffic, pulling that data down. So it's really effective when it does happen. I mean, I would say that probably most people who get hit with this have absolutely no idea, which is why we've gotten some cases on it, right? It's, we've got an email compromise, but we have MFA turned on. We've done all the things. Why did, how did this person get hit? We start digging around and we find some indications that it's that. Just for sort of detection purposes, it's tough to detect unless you know there's a problem, is kind of the thing, because what you'll find is some logs in O3, because it's primarily targeted for Microsoft or Office 365 is usually who they're hitting up with this. And so you'll find things in the logs that'll say, like authentication token accepted or something to that effect, and it'll be from an IP that you don't expect it to be from. Is usually how we track these down. And it's like, well, yeah,
From a logging perspective, it's going to log the IP of the reverse proxy, or it's essentially the server that's set up in between. It's not going to be logging the IP of the client themselves, and so that is one indicator in logs that will be different. It's like, what is this IP?
Yep, exactly. Now the way they've gotten a little trickier about that, right, is setting those up on domestic servers, things like that. So it's not quite as obvious if you see like a Turkey IP or a Russian IP. You'll see New York, but all your people log in from Texas, or something like that. And so it's a little trickier that way. And one of the things that we have to fight through when we're looking at these two is if you use email on your phone, if you're not on like your local Wi-Fi or something like that, you're going through AT&T or Verizon or whoever, and a lot of those IPs are, they'll show up in New York or Atlanta or something like that, and it gets a little tricky that way. A lot of times, though, just something as a quick look is a lot of times those are IPv6 addresses when you're using your mobile plans. So that can help a little bit with that. But yeah, just you got to kind of go check everything. It looks a little weird.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, especially with 2020 and on, there's a lot more remote workers, a lot more IPs from different places. The one kind of help, if it compromised multiple people at least, right, is that you likely have multiple people logging in from the same IP, unless there was some other additional proxying that was happening to random out IPs a little bit on the actual login side as well. Let's say someone just set one of these up, which is already a little sophisticated. I wouldn't say it's extremely easy, but it's not super hard either. But someone set one of these up and then just kind of defaulted it out. You'd see, let's say they fished 100 people, let's say 20 people clicked on it and actually logged in or something like that. You'd see 20 logins from the same IP that were not an IP for your office, and that might be a pretty good indicator.
Yeah, one of the trickier things is like once they have that token, we've seen them sort of shift over to other IPs and go about it that way. But even still, it's usually something that's fairly obviously not what you're expecting to see.
There's some kind of indicator, at least most of the time.
Right, definitely, yeah.
And that was another thing I was going to. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, yeah. You talked about like 100 people and 20 people clicking it. That's not an absurd statistic on these, because what they do is they use like DocuSign and Adobe and things like that to make it look like a legitimate document that you need to click on to sign a contract or something like that. So keep that in mind as well.
Yeah, there's unfortunately still alarming amounts of click-through rates and even sign-in rates on phishing attempts, especially the more sophisticated ones. One of the things I was going to specify too is we talk about like this is a method, and you'll see a lot of articles talking about phishing attempts and phishing attacks that bypass MFA. I mean, technically they're not bypassing MFA. Generally, they're just passing through the MFA, and then they'll having you do your normal MFA, your normal login, and they're capturing the token on the end, like the login details, the credential that gets stored in the browser. So basically, whenever you log in, you're like, remember this computer for 30 days? That thing that makes that happen, and then they can log in, as they normally would, or just use that token to kind of just access it. And so it's not so much that, oh, they did this thing and now they have a username and password they can use without multi-factor. It's that they have the session. Though it was noted that oftentimes once they have access to the session, they'll go in and add an additional method of a multi-factor authentication that they control so that they can log back in with MFA present and still get in. Again, none of it's really actually a bypass. It's more just, letting them still get into things.
Yeah, and so that's a good point there too. There are two things that we see in practice when we see these attacks. One is that they add an additional MFA, right? They're going to add in their attacker phone, whatever it is, or whatever app they're using to multi-factor. So it's a good idea to do this regularly anyways. Review your users, review your user accounts, and make sure that all the MFA devices that are on there you expect to be there. The other thing that we see them do, and this one's a little more advanced, but we've been seeing it more over the last few months really, is setting up an Office or Microsoft 365 app. And so you can sort of install these apps to your account, and those often do not require multi-factor. And so if they're serving up like a lot of times what we'll see is the I can see the acronym, can't remember what it stands for, but it's essentially a remote PowerShell to that. And so it's like the web something shell. So once that's there, if it's set up to allow that app to connect using that protocol, that method, then the multi-factor is completely bypassed. Like it doesn't even ask for it. It just, they figure that you've gotten past multi-factor to set this up, so now you're good. But those things, go review those. There's tons of those probably in your Office 365 tenants. It's a lot of them that don't make sense, but they're legitimate sometimes. It's really weird. I mean, we've seen them named like test app and things like that, but they could also name it Adobe with a extra E or something like that to not catch your eye, because they can pretty much name them whatever they want. So those are the two methods we see there. And then one thing too on the sophistication, it is a sophisticated attack. Don't want to diminish that at all, but this one in particular, EvilProxy itself, it's the reason we're talking about this one, is it's a service. So it's like a malware as a service. type situation. So an attacker can go and essentially pay for that hardware and then utilize it. So your attacker themselves don't have to be that sophisticated, even though it's a sophisticated attack.
Rob in the chat said, given the risk, is there a good business reason to have more than one MFA device? I mean, what do you think?
Good is relative. So, we've been talking DEFCON. So one of the things that happened to me last year was on the way back from DEFCON, in an effort to not get sick, which was unsuccessful. I had hit my phone with some hand sanitizer, and it got down in there and killed my phone. And so I lost all of my MFA around this time last year, which was a huge pain. I'm not even sure I have all of them back at this point. But so there's cases like that where you want more than one device. There are other ways to handle that, though. So like, if you're using Google Authenticator or something like that, right? If you have another Google device, another Android device, you can have your authenticator on more than one device, so you don't have that problem. But as for just to double up or add an extra one as a business practice, I'm not sure that I can think of one. I don't know, anything pop in your head, Eric?
No, I mean, like the backup thing is probably the biggest thing, like I was going to say too. Not so much two different, like I don't have two different phones set up as MFA devices, but I do commonly use YubiKeys, but also have a backup method to that. So like for some reason, if I don't have a YubiKey with me, I switched it to a different laptop and I forgot, and I took this laptop with me that doesn't have it or whatever it might be. I always have a backup normal MFA kind of offering on my phone or something like that, but that's not two registered devices per se. I don't know. It's a YubiKey and a device, but they're separate things kind of. So I can see value in that. But
yeah, definitely. I think that's a good call. The YubiKey stuff is a good way to go about that. And as we've talked about before too, mobile phones are going to be more and more targeted as time goes on because we're using them for so much for authentication. So it's a good idea to be able to use some other device like that, something that's kind of offline and not really always connected. The phone's really convenient, and that's why everybody uses it. Everybody's got it in their pocket. You're not going to have the scenario where Eric shows up with a different device and doesn't have his keys, that kind of thing. But yeah, I don't see a good reason to allow more than one device, just some kind of backup, like Eric's saying.
I mean, I would say too, though, that I don't know that it's so much a thing that look, I'm just thinking out loud here. I haven't developed a formal thought on this, but I don't know that it matters so much that we are saying, hey, you can only have one device for your MFA. Or only have two, or whatever the situation might be. I think more importantly is that we're alerting on new MFA devices and then checking to make sure that was valid, right? I mean, once the initial rollout happens for MFA, it's probably pretty rare that new devices are being added, even for a decently large organization. I don't think look, a huge organization probably has a decent amount of stuff in there, and that's your own battle you got to fight. But I'd say for the average, like medium size or kind of smaller, large business or something like that, I mean, there's probably not a massive amount of device changeover when it comes to these things, being able to alert on that and just reaching out and being like, did you add a new device, for MFA, probably is worth doing. I know that anytime I do anything in our Microsoft account, I get an email or a chat message or a phone call from our IT staff being like, did you do this? So, it's always nice to have that backup. Just look and say, this isn't a thing that should happen very much. It's generally, whenever this happens, it has an effect on security in some form, whether it's a proper effect or not. Let's look into it.
And big shout to our IT guys, Jeff and Brett, because they get a lot of trouble from Team Ambush. I mean, they just do. We're always playing with something that looks malicious, and it probably is, but we're doing it somewhere that we should be and that kind of thing. But I know I've gotten a few phone calls here and there of what's going on, but good to know. But yeah, I totally agree with that. Yeah, definitely alert on new MFA devices. Same thing goes for the Office Microsoft 365 apps. If you can alert on new apps being added, do that. I want to say there's a way in the policy. It's been a while since I've looked at this, but I think you can lock it down to only approved apps as well. Which I would say, just if that's still an option, turn that on, because you may have to approve a few things here and there to let Salesforce connect or whatever the thing is that your folks want to use, but it's going to be well worth the return there on not getting exposed this way, because they're not overly easy to find either once they're added. They're generally per account, so you kind of have to know somebody's compromised or at least be suspicious, then go look at the app specifically for their account. and there's not really a good global way to do that. They will list them all out, and I'm a little iffy on how accurate that is, but it's at least something you can check. But yeah, locking down those apps, great call. Another, because that one is, I guess, technically an MFA bypass, but it's after you've already gotten MFA satisfied, so it's a little bit different. But yeah, it's good call there.
Yeah. Another thing I'll point out about this EvilProxy campaign that's ongoing, if it's still ongoing, is it's using another. I mean, like, one, it has this reverse proxy pass through to try to get all the things we already talked about, this man in the middle type situation, grab that data, get in and do stuff. But another thing it's doing to try to get around some of the filtering of emails coming in is using legitimate open redirectors on services like, I mean, I think what it talked about was YouTube and something else.
I think it was a Cloudflare thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, it might have been. I've heard of other ones too. Bing has one. Link shorteners in general that are legitimate. Sometimes, we'll kind of get those, but also just these kind of redirectors. You think about like an example. If you could browse YouTube a decent amount, if you click a link that's in the description of a video, it'll pop up something like, "Hey, you're about to leave YouTube. Are you sure you want to do this?" That's because it used a YouTube link that will redirect you out, but it wants to verify, right? So you can take advantage of some of that activity, some of that process is in there to essentially give a YouTube link that then forwards you off to the malicious site. But then when you're doing your email filtering, it's looking for unknown sites and stuff like that, but maybe it's not looking for YouTube links, right? Or one of these other legitimate services. So they're also employing something like that. That's something that we're seeing more and more of. I think you've probably seen a decent amount of it, Pink, in cases, but that's just another one to call out that's in this attack vector or like chain that is commonly being used in other places as well these days.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we've not. I don't know that we've seen a huge increase in that, but we did start seeing that kind of thing a couple years ago with using like a OneNote document that was made public that had a link in that OneNote document that they made look like a PDF download or something like that.
Right.
That kind of, but it's the same thing, right? Because your your email filter is not going to flag on OneNote.microsoft.com or wherever it is. So it is really effective to get past those filters, and this is the thing, like we always say, is it does end up boiling down to people here, right? You've got to train people, and this one's tough because it looks pretty legitimate. But your email filters, your spam filters, that things, those are great, and you should absolutely have those. But don't let that be your only defense. Don't let it just be like, oh, we've got this in place, it's going to work fine. Because I do know, I mean, just talking to people, one of the things that they rely on is that new domain filter, right? Is this a new domain was created in the last 30 or 60 days or whatever, and don't allow people to go to it. But this completely bypasses that. So just something to keep in mind there. Those things, again, are really good, and you should have them in place, but just don't let it be your only defense.
Yeah, I mean, on the note of the OneNote thing or the Microsoft hosted documents and stuff too, an important thing to keep in mind too, just for anybody who hadn't really considered this angle, is that not only will the link come from Microsoft, but you actually have the built-in functionality inside the Microsoft application to share the file from there. So the email comes from Microsoft as well.
Yep.
So if I put a malicious document on a share file that I've created, and then I make it open to the public, and I just say share, and I put your email address in, you get an email with a valid Microsoft link from Microsoft. It never comes from me at all. And so it bypasses a lot of filters that way.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Speaking of bypassing filters, email filters, you talk about this next one?
Sure.
This was kind of neat. Next one we had was about QR codes being used for credential theft. I saw this and I was like, well, of course they are, but because I think we've all been scared of QR codes for a while. I mean, I got one, I ordered a device the other day, and the only way to manage it was with an app, and the only way to get the app was a stupid QR code. I mean, I got this thing in the mail, I paid for it, I knew it was coming, and I'm still sitting there like, man, I really don't want to scan this thing. I don't I don't know. But I did, and it's okay. But yeah, so the sort of big article on this one was about how they targeted a large U.S. energy company. That said, though, they got a majority of the emails, but there were a bunch of people involved, like insurance companies, things like that. It was a pretty large campaign. They said over 1,000 emails. Very targeted as well, I believe, is the way they framed this. Mostly going after upper level management, that kind of thing. Um, Emails that said things like, "Hey, you need to update your MFA, or you need to change your password, whatever. Scan this QR code to do it." I would say a lot of people do that because we've kind of all, QR codes are everywhere now. I mean, they just are. As I was reading this, I was thinking about you guys in Vegas in 21. I didn't go, but I remember you guys were telling me that all the menus out there at the restaurants were just QR codes.
I mean,
And
they
I was like,
still are.
man, are they really? Oh man.
Yep.
It just seems like the worst thing during a hacker conference, right? Like, I
Yeah.
mean, just print out some stickers, pop them on some tables or whatever you're doing, and have fun. Surprised there's not a bigger rash of that happening out there.
Well, in 2021, when DEFCON was going on, there was a massive amount of that. I mean, people were putting their own QR stickers on the menu signs out front and stuff. I think a lot of it was mostly just to show you that you're being dumb, not so
Yeah.
much to try to steal your creds. Because here's the thing. We got to think it through like actual humans here and be like, if I go up and I have to scan a QR for the menu and it asks me to log in with some kind of credentials, first, I'm not gonna know what I'm supposed to log in with, and I'm definitely not doing it. And I would hope most of you people out there would not. You'd look at the person, the hostess or whoever who's about to seat you, who just told you to scan for the menu, and go, why is it asking me to log in? Right.
Right.
And they would hopefully identify that there was an issue right there and then, and you wouldn't actually get stung with it. But that doesn't mean that all situations are like that. And it is a concerning thing for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And this one's just an email variation of that, right? And so it's a little goofy, and I think the article even calls that out because, I mean, how many QR codes are you getting in your email for one thing? It doesn't happen very often, so it's going to be a little bit of a red flag already. But it's another way, like we were talking about, to get around some of those email filters and that kind of thing, right? It's just an image hosted somewhere coming in through your email. It's not at hackerhq.com, right, and going to get flagged. So more just an interesting thing. I mean, I am curious. Have you guys played with QR codes in any of your tests?
No, not really. I could think of some context though, some pretext that would work well for it. It would just have to be the right time, the right people. But like you said, you don't get a lot of QR codes. But I could see someone falling for something along the lines of like, "Hey, we've updated our MFA guidelines. We're going to be enabling a new version of MFA on your mobile devices. Please scan this QR code. It's going to ask you to log in and then set up this MFA device, blah, 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 blah." And I bet you could land some people with that pretext with that.
Yeah, I'll tell
And
you right.
I think, and kind of the thing that was crossing my mind as we talked about the menus, we talk about all these things, is we always talk about in security in general, like certain types of exhaustion, right? Like we talk about trying not to have self-signed certificates because then it puts you in this like accepting all certificates. You just get exhausted by how many times you get to do it. You accept them. You just naturally do that. That's just the way of life now, right? I think a lot of people know that QR codes, well, a lot of people don't know that QR codes are anything to be concerned about, but even people who do, they still do it. They have to. Like you said, you got a device, you got to scan it. You go to a restaurant. I mean, I could sit there and complain all day to the hostess about how ridiculously insecure it is to make me get a menu this way. And then, the hostess is going to stare at me and go, "Okay, well, that's how you get the menu." At the end of the day, they're like,
Yeah.
it's not like they've got a bunch of menus sitting around to give me. There's
Yeah.
nothing I can do about it. So we get exhausted by the idea that this is just 2023. This is how we do business now. This is how we do things. And so, I mean, I've heard so many people. I was literally at a security meetup in Portland the week before DEFCON or the week before that or whatever, and someone was like, "Oh, here's a QR code to scan for that," and someone's like, the immediate response from the security person is like, "Oh yeah, I'm supposed to just trust the security person with the QR code," and then pulls out their phone and scans it. It's like we say it out loud. I don't trust this thing, and I'm going to do it anyway.
You're gonna do
Because
it anyway.
because it's just like that's the way of life these days. Like I can't trust it, but I got to do it anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was like I said, the thing I bought, it was just like, this is how you get the app to run your device that you just paid a lot of money for.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what am I going to do? I mean, I just bought this thing. It's how I got to get to it. If I want to eat at that restaurant, I'm going to have to see the menu or just take a stab at it. Like, I don't know if it's a burger joint, just, hey, I'll take a cheeseburger, but they've probably got some cool name for it that you got to order it with. But yeah, it is that fatigue. It's weird to me, almost how quickly that happens too, right? I mean, I know you're old enough to remember when everybody got a website, and it was just like everywhere you went was like, "Oh yeah, go check us out on www.ericsweetbeard.com," and it was like, okay. And we were all kind of annoyed about it at first, and now it's just like, I don't know, I want to know about Eric's Sweet Beard. I bet it's ericsweetbeard.com. We just go, don't think about it. And so like QR codes are kind of that way as well. Click Rob says click on all the images of a bicycle to obtain Big Mac. Yeah, exactly, right. It's like I'm gonna click on the stupid images because I want that Big Mac.
That's right.
But yeah, that's another good point too there from Brian about traveling and being in a place where English isn't spoken. I mean, that's a handy thing, right? I mean, most of the things that get exploited are exploited because they become so ubiquitous and that they're everywhere and everybody uses them, and it's just a normal thing. And so, yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, most of the things that we take advantage of, when I say we, I mean attackers in general, a lot of things that become exploited that are not necessarily a vulnerability are these things that we've added to life as conveniences, right? These things that we've gotten used to, or it's just the way it has to be done. Maybe it's not even a convenience. I don't think a QR code is more convenient than a menu. I'll tell you that much right now.
No.
But it's convenient, I guess, for the restaurant or the establishment or whatever. It's convenient if you're worried about germs on something like that. You just have your device. There's certain conveniences to it, and we get used to these things, and then we take advantage of the conveniences in our everyday lives to be the thing that, like, hey, people don't want to resist this anymore. Yeah. Right. And you got to remember, like, when it comes to phishing or it comes to trying to social engineer anyone in general, social engineering is all about overcoming these resistances, right? People have resistances in certain areas. You try to either not run into those resistances, try to take a completely different detour around them, or have something prepared to wash past it once you are met with resistance. And so one of the easiest ways to social engineer someone, whether it be indirect through something like a QR code or a phishing email, or whether it be directly, is just to kind of take the normal standard flow of life and the conveniences of life and use those to your advantage. And you're not going to stop seeing that be the case.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's, I mean, normal flow of life things, right? We use this example all the time, right? But talk about getting into buildings in a physical situation, right? Just hold a cake box. Somebody's going to hold the door open for you. You're the person with cake. They're going to do it, right? And just out of
I like cake.
Yeah, I like cake. But I mean, even beyond that, it's just common human courtesy, right? You see somebody with their hands full, you hold the door open for them. It's just a thing that we do as humans to help another human out. And you can take advantage of those things, but it's just again, it's getting in that normal
ladder
flow.
And all the other things, right? Like, just and they all kind of come back to, though, I would say one thing, which is, like, anyone who does a decent amount of social engineering knows, it's like really just comes down to the confidence. I feel like sometimes putting on the vest makes you get in because you're just more confident that you look like you should be there. You walk in without the dang vest on or whatever, like when I talk about like vest, like a safety vest or something like
safety
that.
Vest,
yeah. You just walk in looking like you know what you're going to do, or look what you're there to do, like you have a purpose and that you're supposed to be there. And I feel like even then, at least 50% of the time, people are just like, he knows what he's doing. He's fine.
Yeah.
He doesn't look lost. If you go around searching cubicles, you're going to get asked something. If you walk straight to one, do something and leave, people will be like, I wonder what that was. Well, they look like they know what they're doing, and just kind of move on.
I mean, hey, I'm Pinky from IT is the best line ever to get in anywhere, pretty much. It just like, I mean, I've done this before, like as just part of we were helping some folks out. But if you've worked in IT, you often will have a general idea of where they're going to stash the network closet or the data center when you walk in that building. There's just patterns of these things, right? And I know one in particular I just walked in is like, hey, I'm Mike from IT. I need to take a look at the network closet. And I pointed in the general direction, right? Just to say, hey, I know where I'm going, kind of thing. And that was exactly what they responded with, was like, oh, okay, so you know where you're going? Yep. All right, cool. Let me in. I'm in. I've got whatever I want. This was a fairly sensitive place. Yeah, I mean, and even just as part of a normal job, I know probably a lot of our listeners are IT people. I mean, how many times have you walked into a new branch office or something like that and just said, hey, I'm Eric from IT. I need to take a look at something. And they're just like, okay, cool. Yeah, just let you on in. It's just.
Yeah. I mean, I will say, for the devil's advocate on that, in 2023, it's getting harder, right? People are doing more training. They're talking about this stuff a lot more. We're beating into people's heads. Stop letting people tailgate. I don't care if they have a box of cake. Don't let them in without scanning a badge or without checking with the front desk. Drop it at the front desk. If you really want to be helpful, ask them where it's going. Say, I'll take the cake in for you. You can't come in here, right? We're getting better at that. Society is getting better. Is it there? No, but it's better. I know that at least a lot of the companies, organizations that we work with, it is getting harder. 6 years ago, we had like a 100% success rate on every physical engagement. We don't anymore. You know what I mean? Like, it's people are getting a lot better. They're learning from it. They're asking questions. They're going, oh, they're still being helpful. They're still being nice, but they're like, but let me call someone to verify.
Yeah.
Because that's all it takes. Oh my God, I would love to let you in. Give me a second. Let me call someone to verify. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And the
people are
important
getting better.
Yeah, the important part there to note is it's not because you guys are getting worse at it. It's because other people are getting better at just taking those basic precautions. And that's great. I mean, that's what we want to see. I want to see you guys fail every test you do, just to be honest with you. I mean, but, that's not the case. But, Eric and so the blue team, red team, we've been doing a lot of like purple team planning and stuff. And we did some purple team exercises over the last year. And that was, at least from the blue team side, it's like, hey, we didn't get anything on this particular test. I'm like, well, good. That's a good thing. I want to see that. But so that's good for everybody.
Yeah, back to this QR code thing.
Yeah,
QR codes.
Yeah, we got really distracted there.
I don't know about that. We talked about really useful, good things, right?
That's true.
But yeah, I think this doesn't have to be a link that comes in the email, so it gets the bypasses, as we kind of walked into this with, is a way that it kind of generally makes it to inboxes easier. It can be an image or a PDF or whatever, but it doesn't have any outgoing links. You generally scan it from a phone, that takes you to the outgoing link, sets you up for the fish. Targeted a bunch of C levels, director levels, manager levels. We're pretty successful, I think, with it. I don't know if the numbers of what the percent of click rate was.
I didn't see that either.
Yeah. But
it actually seemed like it was successful, but they were saying just that it wasn't as successful as I guess it could have been. I'm not sure. It was worded kind of strangely, but yeah.
Yeah. But another important one is that this one uses a Bing redirector for the link if it needed to. Just one more step of like, hey, this QR code goes somewhere, but it goes to a Bing redirector, which then takes you to the actual malicious stuff. So there's one more layer, because we're seeing more and more people layer those links in to try to get past any kind of filters they run into.
Yeah, I mean, even just that too. I mean, I know it's not the same with the QR code, right? But we've taught people for years now to, if you're going to click a link, hover over it, and make sure it's actually going to where you expect it to go, that kind of thing. But if you see Bing, you're probably not going to be as concerned about that. So
not as concerned.
Yeah,
you should still be concerned, especially if the setup is, click this, or like scan this QR code to view this PDF, and then it's linking you to Bing. That seems to not add up, but at least it seems kind of trustworthy, so it's going to get more people. But yeah, and the more they layer some of these things, even things that are meant to kind of layer through on the links, maybe stop after one or two layers, right? And so on the last one we were talking about with the EvilProxy stuff, that one had several layers in the linking, so it was a little bit harder for things to deep dive into that and maybe say that yes, this is malicious.
Yeah, good.
Last
good call.
Thing to talk about, because we are down to like 12 minutes left, right? Time flies when we BS about nothing. The last thing, I don't know if other people here heard about it. I saw it show up in my like Twitter news feed I think last week at some point, but someone trained a neural network or a machine learning thing, or an AI, if you want to use the buzzwords that the articles are using, to listen to recorded keystrokes, and with about 95% accuracy be able to spit out what the password was that was typed in after listening to it. What do you think about that, Pink?
Well, I mean, first I'd just like to say to our AI overlords that are listening, I fully trust you. You guys are great. Good, keep up the good work.
You gotta keep that in.
But yeah, and as we kind of talked about, we were kind of looking through these notes before the show. This one's probably not actually AI. It's just, they're kind of, like Eric said, using some buzzwords there, that kind of thing. I think it's neat. I think it's a really neat thing that they've done here, but I don't think it's overly effective. At least not yet, right? Maybe when they do actually apply AI to it, they'll figure some things out. But it's just one of those things. I'm sure for other security people or IT people we have on the call, you get a lot of these, hey man, AI could just steal your passwords, listen to you on Zoom now. And it's like, well, can it? It's, let's look at this a little bit. And it's kind of one of those things where, sure, this is possible based on what this article says. It also is very specific in how it has to be done. And I think, Eric, that was kind of what we were landing on. We were talking about this one a little bit.
Yeah, I think you're always going to find people come up with creative, theoretical ways to do things, and then they take it to a lab environment, they do a test, and they're like, hey, I was able to make this, I had this theory, I was able to prove this theory. It can work. And in some of the ones that exist out there are mind blowing. I remember reading an article like in, I don't even know, 2000 about storing data in bacteria and how bacteria was going to be the new basis for hard drives. It isn't yet. Like all kinds of things, right? People can prove that, like, yes, I can store data in bacteria and I can then pull that data back out and you could use it as a storage system. Neat. Like DNA programming of things and stuff, but it's not actually in use. And we've heard about all kinds of things. People talk about stealing data over speakers that are, sending out a sound that is inaudible, but you can actually pick it up from one computer to the other, completely air gapped, and transfer data. Neat, but then you still have to have the malware on both sides. You have to get it to that air gapped computer. It has to know what it needs to get and transfer without you being part of it. Like, there's a lot of theory involved that goes into it. And the keyboard thing, I think, is the same way. And maybe, I mean, I did not read fully through this paper. I'll be completely honest. I didn't dig into all the technicals of it, but I can just immediately go, hey, that is totally believable. I totally understand how there's going to be certain types of acoustics for each key press that you could differentiate if you have the resolution to differentiate that, right, in the recording. My issue, and the biggest thing, the first thing that comes to my mind is, but not all keyboards sound the same. I mean, you could have a mechanical keyboard or, a standard keyboard. It could be some cheap plastic thing. It could be like the standard one that comes with a Dell versus like this super metal custom soldered keyboard that I have that has a metal frame, a carbon fiber plate in it. It's got, certain types of Zelios lube switches in it. Like, this sounds completely different than your standard keyboard, right? So the idea that there's going to be just one AI overlord that can just listen to every password typed anywhere, be able to tell you what it was, I think we're very far from that reality. I think the idea of being concerned that you're on a Zoom call like right now, and if I typed in my password here, just that you'd be able to then pick up and know what I typed, I don't think we're at that point of concern. But we do know that if I was to be on a call with you and you turned up the threshold for your, you turned off noise suppression, the thresholds for your pickup, and I said, hey, can you hit every single key on your keyboard 25 times for me? And then I was to feed that into a model and then had you type your password, I could probably get it. So if anyone ever asks you to do that, I would definitely be careful. Maybe not do what they're asking.
Yeah, that was part of this study, right? Was they had to hit each key 25 times, record that. Well, I think, as you put it, hit it with a bunch of math, or throw a bunch of math at it, and then figure out some differences and things like it was very crazy. Um, it would have to be exceptionally targeted for this to work, and exactly like Eric's saying, you'd have to get that baseline already anyway. A lot of things like that have to go wrong. That said, Eric, when you typed in your password a minute ago, I totally heard it. It's 1337. I got it. So boom,
Yeah,
just gave it to everybody.
You missed half of it.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'll go back and listen to the replay. I bet it's like starts with an H after that. But yeah.
Yeah, they documented my keyboard for future sound monitoring. I appreciate that, John. I really do. I hope you get all of my passwords. I don't generally type them though, so that's going to be a problem.
It's tough. Yeah, it's tough
Yeah.
like that. Yeah. Do you have a question here though in chat? And honestly, that's about all we have to say about the keyboard thing. It was just kind of neat, and we wanted to throw it out there.
Well, and I'll say too, I think the biggest reason we added it to it is I got like 10 different people asked me about it as soon as the news broke on it. Like, people are like, well, you can record and you could walk by with your phone and you can know someone's password. And it's like, that's not exactly true. That's kind of a little scaremongering. So yeah.
Just always watch out for those. Somebody's always trying to drum up clicks. I mean, think about that. So the question here though, Eric, I don't know if you have any experience with these folks, but I do. So the question in chat was, does anyone have any experience with Huntress managed EDR? Claim to be very good at detecting and alerting on persistency and offering 365 eyes on glass SOC. I will say this, in that we have worked with Huntress a whole bunch. Seem to be a really good team. They really know their stuff. The main guy, their name is slipping me right at the moment, slipping my mind at the moment. Really sharp dude. Like I said, they do a lot of good stuff. They do claim to have some methods for detecting that kind of stuff that is really advanced. And the one thing I haven't got to do is sort of test that. We've talked with them a bunch and different things like that. Their solution doesn't work well for the way we handle incidents. But I do know that they've put a lot of work into it. It looks really good. So I'm never going to just straight up recommend a product, but I will say that I, from experience with them, they do seem to be pretty awesome. So definitely talk to them some more about that. As with any managed SOC, managed EDR solution, just make sure you really understand what you're buying from them. Make sure that you know everything that they're monitoring. So one of the things we run into a lot is, well, we have this managed SOC, they're watching everything for us, and we find out that they're only watching the workstations, or they're only watching the servers and not monitoring the firewalls and different things like that, or they're getting this log file but not that log file. And so just be really mindful when you talk to them about, hey, what all are you guys watching? What can you see? That kind of thing, and just figure that out. So, and that's with anybody, Huntress or anybody you talk to.
Yeah, I will say that my interactions with Huntress is minimal. I've spoke to people there. I've had good conversations with people at Huntress. As far as from the actual work side of things, on the attacking side, we don't honestly get to see a lot of what gets alerted, logged, detected when we're doing what we're doing. Sometimes people will share that stuff with us, like, hey, we caught you, or someone else caught you, our third party SOC or whatever, caught you doing this or that, or yada yada. But a lot of times they don't tell us that, and so we don't really know. I don't have really stories one way or the other for Huntress, which honestly is good. If I had stories, generally they're bad. Generally, it's a situation where it's like, I have a story about that place because they never detect anything we did. And the reason I find that out is because the clients are upset that they never detected it. And I don't have any stories like that about Huntress. I've talked to people there, they seem good. And we are pretty product agnostic. So like Piggy said, we don't generally ever recommend one thing over the other, but I think Piggy's advice is good. Make sure you understand what you're getting, what they're going to do. Ask them themselves, what kind of stuff would they miss, or would they not be able to do for you? And just have those conversations. And I think you'll be in generally better place.
Don't ever be afraid to ask those questions. It's your product. I know a lot of people get weird about that, but you just got to ask. Like, hey, we need to know this if we're going to work with you. This is probably slightly biased just because we have talked to them and that kind of thing. So just want to preface it with that. But they seem like the kind of people who would probably answer those questions for you. Maybe ask to get an engineer on the phone or something like that too, to talk to them about it, not just sales, because I love you, all of you who are on sales, but you're going to say, yeah, it totally catches everything because that's what they're told to say. So get an engineer, get a tech of somebody on something on the phone, and ask specific questions. Ask the broader questions, but then drill in. Just be like, hey, if a encoded command comes in, are you guys going to see that? How would you see that? How are you monitoring to find that? And get the answer on that kind of thing.
Anytime I've been in a situation where I'm on a call with a tech, because sometimes people reach out to us and they want us to test their stuff. They want us to they want us to become product. What's the opposite of agnostic? Agnostic. They want us to talk about their things, and they'll have us test certain things and things. Whenever I'm on those situations, though, and I'm on with the tech, I mean, I always just ask kind of right up front, like, I might not know all the questions. I might not know exactly what I should ask you to find your gaps. I'll just be like, what are your gaps? Everybody's got gaps. What are they? Tell me.
Yeah.
I mean, if someone says they have none, that's a red flag to me.
Oh yeah, I'm out. Yeah.
So
yeah. Works off magic and AI, and it was like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, we'll not be talking to you anymore. Congratulations. So.
Yeah, well, hold on. I work off of magic and AI. So.
Well, but that's a different. It's
Okay.
That's alcohol intoxication. That's what that AI. No.
All right. With that, we're gonna
let's wrap it up. All right. Everybody have
appreciate everybody coming out and doing some chat and listening in. I think next month I will be alone next month, I believe, for this, unless we reschedule it. We might reschedule it. We'll see.
Yeah, Oscar and I will both be out teaching some things. So
yeah. So have a good one. See you next month. Goodbye.
Bye, everybody.